You know Duolingo, right? We've all seen that persistent, maybe slightly menacing green owl haunting our notifications, constantly reminding us to practice our Spanish before we lose our daily streak. But what looks like this simple, fun, almost game-like app on the surface is actually the result of an incredibly rigorous, meticulously crafted design system. In today's explainer, we're literally deconstructing the exact rules that make Duolingo so famously playful and engaging. We are going to tear down the anatomy of this brand, step by step, using their actual internal guidelines. Right off the bat, their internal guidelines greet designers with this really powerful statement. Language never stands still, and neither do we. I absolutely love this, because it sets such a dynamic, energetic tone for everything we're about to explore. It proves that every single button, color palette, and comma is governed by a highly purposeful system. The whole idea is to keep the brand unified, alive, and constantly moving forward. Seriously, absolutely nothing you experience when you open that app is an accident. So here is our quick roadmap for today's explainer. Number 1, the core brand identity. 2, the geometry of illustration. 3, a vibrant color palette. 4, the Duolingo voice. And 5, formatting and style rules. Okay, let's jump right into section 1, the core brand identity, starting with Duo himself. Take a second to think about the color green, specifically the exact hex code 58CC02. Internally, the Duolingo team calls this feather green. Their brand guidelines strictly dictate that their core colors are pulled directly from Duo the owl, and this specific feather green is the absolute anchor of their entire visual identity. It's the primary hue the world instantly associates with the brand. In fact, their own internal rule literally states, when in doubt, lean into green. It's that exact color that makes the app instantly pop on a crowded phone screen. Moving right along to section 2, the geometry of illustration, building the world. With that core green established, how does Duolingo physically draw the rest of its world? Well, it all comes down to a really strict geometry. The crucial point we have to understand is that every single illustration in the Duolingo universe is built exclusively from just 3 basic shapes: the rounded rectangle, the circle, and the rounded triangle. Designers can slice these specific shapes up to piece together whatever they need, but there is a hard, fast rule. Absolutely no pointy edges are ever allowed. Pointy shapes are strictly labeled as off-brand. This inherent mandated roundness is exactly what makes the entire app feel so incredibly friendly, safe, and welcoming to a new learner.
But you might be wondering, if everything is just soft circles and rounded rectangles, how does it stay visually interesting? How does it not just get super repetitive? Well, the guidelines introduce a brilliant concept called rhythm. Think of it like a musical melody. If you play the exact same note over and over, people are going to tune out. By mixing short and long visual notes, meaning shapes with completely different visual weights, they keep the user's eye engaged. It communicates a story, telling your brain where to look first rather than just throwing a predictable, boring stack of blocks at you. To maintain that rhythm, they have a strict simplicity rule. 15 is the ideal target number of shapes per illustration. If a designer uses only 6 shapes, the drawing becomes far too abstract and it's hard for the brain to quickly decipher. But if they go overboard and use 30 shapes, it becomes way too cluttered and complex for a tiny mobile screen. 15 is that perfect sweet spot where the illustration remains remarkably simple, yet every single shape genuinely matters to the overall image. And notice how they handle space. To maintain a perfectly flat, two-dimensional perspective, shadows under objects and characters must always be pill-shaped. They can never, ever be ovals. Why is that? Because ovals naturally imply unwanted depth and a 3D perspective that completely breaks the illusion. By strictly enforcing a simple pill shape for every single shadow, Duolingo ensures their world stays clean, flat, and perfectly consistent across millions of different screens and devices. Okay, section 3, a vibrant color palette, painting the world. So we have our shapes, now we need to paint them. Because all of Duolingo's apps and services are designed with stark white backgrounds, designers obviously can't use white as a base color for objects, so they rely on a strict no-gray rule. Instead of using gray to create contrast against a white background, designers have to use light pastels with names like swan or polar. Gray is completely forbidden because it feels cold, corporate, and frankly lifeless. The pastel alternatives ensure the app constantly maintains a warm, energetic, and uniquely human feel. All right, so we've mastered the look and feel, the iconic greens, the rounded edges, the warm pastels. But that begs the question, how does the Duolingo brand actually sound? How on earth do you design the actual language of a language learning app?
let's get into Section 4, the Duolingo Voice, Rules of Engagement. Welcome to the writing rules, where sheer approachability completely overrides strict academic correctness. Traditionally, grammar rules dictate you should spell out numbers under 10. Well, not at Duolingo. They mandate writing numbers out numerically, even the small ones like 4 or 7. Seeing the digit 4 makes the interface much faster and incredibly easier for the user to scan while rapidly tapping through a lesson. The only exception is if the number happens to start a sentence. But otherwise, rapid efficiency always beats out tradition.
Duolingo also takes a hard stance on the highly debated Oxford comma. They strictly mandate it. Writing bite-sized, fun, and effective with that final crucial comma is required because punctuation marks act as tiny visual dividers. They help break complex information down into clear, highly readable chunks for the learner. It's all about making the text as easy for the brain to digest as humanly possible, removing absolutely any ambiguity.
And here is a super strict one regarding periods. You are never allowed to punctuate headlines, subheads, or buttons with periods. A phrase like freeze your streak should never have a dot at the end of it. Now, exclamation points are perfectly fine to add a little energy, but a period, it creates a visual full stop. It basically acts as a microscopic roadblock for the eye that subtly clutters up the interface. The overriding goal here is to keep the screen incredibly clean, open, and direct. Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, Formatting and Style Rules, the granular details. We're looking at the hyper-specific, almost subliminal formatting details that maintain this casual vibe throughout your entire learning journey. The guidelines dictate very specific rules for what actually earns a capital letter. Specific, unique app features like stories or leaderboards, achievements you unlock like sharpshooter, and items you purchase like a health shield are always given the importance of a capital letter. These aren't just standard app features. They are treated with the utmost reverence of proper nouns within the Duolingo universe to make them feel really special and rewarding. But on the flip side, items you earn, non-specific parts of a course, or general interface elements remain strictly lowercase. Gems, crowns, your streak, the word bank, your hearts, all completely lowercase. And this is a deliberate, brilliant psychological choice. By minimizing capitalization on everyday elements, they make the product and the brand feel significantly less intimidating and much more approachable for a user who might be genuinely struggling to learn a difficult new language. You know, you might want to forget what you learned in English class for a second. Every brand has its own rules, and Duolingo's golden rule is to always sound human. Contractions like your are highly encouraged over the stiff, robotic you are. Furthermore, their guidelines explicitly state it is perfectly fine to start sentences with conjunctions like and or but, or to end a sentence with a preposition like with, just as long as it sounds more like a natural, everyday conversation you'd have with a close friend. Even something as incredibly mundane as writing out a phone number is highly regulated. They standardize phone numbers to use hyphens only, no parentheses around the area code whatsoever. Why? Because parentheses are just unnecessary visual clutter. Every single character on the screen must absolutely earn its keep, and if it doesn't aid rapid, instant comprehension for the user, it gets completely stripped away. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. How does strictly regulating a tiny comma, a pill-shaped shadow, or the exact hex code of a green owl actually make a brand unforgettable? It's because radical consistency builds deep-seated trust. By enforcing these incredibly precise, granular rules behind the scenes, Duolingo guarantees a frictionless, joyful, and warm experience every single time you open the app. It removes the stress and friction of learning, leaving you eager to jump back in. So the next time that green owl politely or aggressively reminds you to practice, take a closer look. Are you just looking at an app, or are you interacting with a masterclass in invisible, psychological design?